everyone, welcome to my channel. Well, this table here, it's kind of ugly, it's kind of small, and it's sagging in the middle. So today we're going to make a trestle table to go along with this bench and this countertop. Okay, we're back here in my good friend's shop and we're going to make a trestle table. And I don't have any plans for this because to me it's harder to work from plans. If you don't have plans, however you make it, that's just how you meant to make it. Whereas if you have plans, you got to follow the plans. It's very difficult for me to do. So I do have inspiration though. I'm going for sort of a Japanese inspired look. I want very simple lines, nothing overtly ornate about it, just simple, functional trestle table. Just take your ruler and slide it across and make sure it doesn't get hung up anywhere and it doesn't teeter-totter at all. Because when we scribe this bridle joint onto this base, the side that we use to scribe is not going to be the side that actually goes into what we cut out. So we need to make sure that the top and the bottom of this is exactly the same. So now I'm going to use my marking knife and mark this onto this piece. We need to know how to transfer this over to this. And so to do that, just put our dual marking gauge in there, and we're just getting the thickness right now. All right, so now we've got this part locked in, right? So our distance is the same, and now we just need to get this set roughly in the middle. It doesn't have to be exact, but it should be pretty close. And then we'll just mark this one at a time. You don't want to do them both at a time, at the same time. So nice light scores. There you go. It shows up. All right, so we got our workpiece nice and clamped here. We're just going to set the depth of the router off our marking line, and it looks like we're about a 1/16 shy, and that's about where I want to be because I prefer to clean it up with the router plane by hand afterwards. All right, so you'll see that I left a bridge right here, and that is just so that my router plane has something to bear on. I'm calling what I'm doing here a housed bridle joint. I don't know if that's the real name for it. I might have just made that up, but either way, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. I'm gonna have to be willing to accept some maybe subpar results here, simply because the side that I scribe from is not going to be the side that I actually house into the recessed part. There's probably ways around that, but I think for what I'm doing, leaving the one board proud, it's going to make a shadow anyway, and I don't think that the minor imperfections are really going to matter, especially given the fact that it's going to be near a floor. If you're just going for those total top end results, I'd probably suggest just doing a normal bridle joint, or just some other kind of joint in general, or maybe making a template. What I'm doing now is using the router table to make a dovetail housing joint, which is the method that will attach the legs to the table. And this is what it looks like when it's done. Alright, the next thing we're going to work on is the stretcher. This is the piece that holds the two legs together and stabilizes the table. What we're going to do is cut a tenon onto it. The tenon will be attached to the two legs using a through mortise. Alright guys, I've gone over this before, but here's 3, I'd say, intermediate level chisel tips for you. 1 is leave this very end here until the end. 2 is have the material until you can't have anymore. You can see I've got a very thin line here. And 3 is when you chisel, do 2 or 3 taps and then a very slight undercut. The undercut does 2 things. 1, it makes sure your joint fits tightly when you put it together, but 2, it also prevents the chisel from pushing into the marking line. It doesn't have to be a big undercut, because an undercut's an undercut. Just tilt that chisel a little bit until you can see some sunlight. So as you can see here, we've got 2 little ridges on the end. We've got a really nice straight line across there, and this is undercut. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but it is undercut. Now we can come with our chisel and getting a very good line of sight. We can just go right down there. Just very careful, I gotta watch this marking line right here. Now we just go around and do the same thing to every side, and I'll come back when it's time to shape the tenon. I doubt the camera will pick it up, but we do have remnants of our marking line all the way around. So we're just going to use the shoulder plane, maybe some chisel work to get this exactly how we want it. I really enjoy the combination of power tools and hand tools. I know that there's ways and people who will cut this entire thing by machine, but I just find that I'm able to get very good results by combining the two. And also it's just a joy to use the hand tools. It's again, I don't like to think about being done so much as I like to enjoy the process of what I'm doing. The journey is the reward. That's right on the marking line. Alright, we got that decently well square. There's honestly not much to that except having the right tools. A shoulder plane really helps, and then just going slow, taking your time. I decided to leave this little live edge right here as just one more shout out to the tree that it used to be. Alright, the next thing I gotta do is mark these so that I can put the cross piece in. And so I've got them on a nice flat cast iron, and I'm just gonna make sure that they're just totally lined up. So it's gonna be really important that we always reference off the same side. So I'm gonna write R. I'm going to mark out where I want the top of the tenon to go, and I'm wanting it more towards the tabletop than the floor, so I'm going to put it roughly 2/3. I'm going to reference off this line when I do them both, so I want to start there, start consistent. So this is where the dual marking gauge really comes in handy. I'm going to find the thickness of this. So we need to find the middle of this piece. It is 4 5/8 thick. I don't know what that is off the top of my head. But the nice thing is that if we do something easily divisible by 2, this is called the parallelogram method. We know 2 1/2 is half of 5, so that is the middle. And the key is reference from this side always. Don't switch sides. Put our knife in that, slide it over till it hits. Just go like that. Reference from the same side. Go over that with the pencil so you can see. And now we have to do the same thing from the other side, and we are going to do it again, and we just have to keep referencing from the same point. And we'll just do the other one off camera. So you see that when you're going with the grain, just do 2 taps, 2 taps, 2 taps all the way across before you really break it off, because that stuff just wants to split in every which way. Now when you're going When you're chopping end grain, it's a lot easier to keep it clean, but when you're going with the grain, you got to be very careful. So I'll do the same thing over here. Just really, I got a good line of sight here too. I'm trying to go like straight down, just tiny one tap even, because it'll split. And you want it to split where you want it to split, not where it wants to split. I'm gonna make sure that's broken like that. I think it is. Now we can separate that. It's low enough. You see how that's very difficult to get it that clean, and you got to do it. I don't know. You got to be really careful. Do it like I did it, or if you got a better way, let me know. All right. So see, we got one side done. It's nice and clean. The other side, it's the same technique. You're just being careful not to go all the way through. Obviously, you want to turn it around. We want to start from this side and do the same thing. Just going slow, take your time, proper chisel technique. And I showed you how to be very careful when you go with the grain across here. And you just got to be careful to do those two things, and it should come out pretty good, assuming that you've marked well. And marking is difficult also. All right, we got the second side done, and the edge is nice and clean. The inside's not pretty, but we don't have to worry about that so much. It gets filled with glue and it doesn't show. Alright, so I've just glued the bottom part off camera, and now we're going to wipe it down with mineral spirits and finish it. Well, that's always exciting when you see it for the first time. It's going to look nice. And this is the finish that I use for pretty much everything. Mix it roughly equal parts in here, and it's simple. All right, so this is likely going to be the end of part one. Let's talk about the lessons learned, the mistakes, the stuff I like, and the stuff that I don't like. First off, I'm really happy with this design. I searched the internet high and low for pictures of trestle tables that I liked, and there was one that really popped out in my head and spoke to me, and you can almost tell just by looking at the design of these legs in the feet, and that was one by Ishitani Furniture on YouTube. I really liked his walnut and his, he had another one, I don't know if it was a cherry trestle table. And you can kind of see the similarity. That was definitely in the back of my head as I shaped these boards. Alright, so the stuff that I think worked well. I actually think housing this worked pretty well. You can see, you know, it doesn't look bad. I don't think you can really pick up anything, especially I'm shooting this at 28 millimeters, and that's probably representative of about the closest anyone would really examine this. And I think this housing worked fine. I was nervous about it, but I think it looks good. The other thing I did is that this is up and down, and when you drive it in, it presses against the weak direction of the grain, so it probably should be 2 on the top and the bottom pressing that way. Then there'll be no danger of this splitting. This is almost 2 inches thick, so I'm not really too worried about that, but it could be an issue. On one of these legs, my router dropped, and I have this really big bevel edge on one edge of one of these feet. It just looks kind of goofy. Really happy that I left this little bit of a live edge right here. Some people will hate that. I think it's kind of cool. When I cut this cross beam, I specifically cut it so that I could get this grain pattern in here. It's just the remnants of a knot. All right, so let me give you some design pointers. Keep in mind this is all just my opinion. I think when you're making furniture, it's a lot easier to go too big with your widths than it is to go too narrow. I think things get looking clumsy really fast, whereas to go too narrow, I mean, you really, if it breaks and falls over, you went too narrow, but otherwise I think it's pretty safe to go smaller on these pieces. That's just my opinion. I see a lot of you know, woodworking that people have done, and I think I'm not too thrilled about it. And then when I think about the reason why, it's usually because it's just big and awkward and bulky. I think the smaller, more delicate looking pieces look a little bit better, but that's just my personal opinion. All right, so I'll give you a little sneak peek of part 2. We're going to get the book matched vaulted maple slabs and shape them and get them on here. Such a ham.